that startup screen is so nostalgic and brings back a lot of great memories. Hello everyone, this is CSF Watson with the first episode of what I'm for now calling Retro Replay. Like the title suggests, I'm going to be playing through some older games not necessarily from the current or more recent console generations. We'll be starting off with some of the Super Nintendo games I grew up with as a kid, but as we go along we'll be playing other games on the Super Nintendo and other older consoles that I might not have played before. Games like the original Paper Mario games or Mario RPG. There's a wide range, and I'm excited to take this journey with everybody. But for now, we're going to start with one of my favorite games of all time growing up, the original Donkey Kong Country. Good old jungle hijinks. Of all the levels in Donkey Kong Country, I would say I've played this level maybe the second most. The level I've played the most is, without question, Minecart Madness in World 2, but I'll cross that bridge when we get to it. In the meantime, good old Diddy Kong. When we were little, my brother and I would play in cooperative mode, me usually as Donkey Kong, my brother as Diddy, and we would have a lot of fun playing some of these earlier levels over and over again. We weren't the best at games, nor were we actively trying to beat the games. We were just trying to have fun with our favorite levels, and since we were super young, we didn't care how it happened, we just wanted to play the same levels over and over again because it made us happy. Our dad had save files that were further along in the game, but he always made sure that there was at least one file available to keep the characters right next to the levels we wanted to play over and over again. I don't remember accidentally overwriting any save files, but it's entirely possible that I did since I was more focused on just like, ooh, I want to play my favorite stages again, and not really knowing how to accomplish that task. Also, can I just say the animal sidekicks in this game are some of the best in all of video games. Their main purpose is obviously to slightly make the game easier and help uncover secrets in the levels, but they're all just so fun in their different dynamic options. If I had to pick though, of all the companions, my favorite two were Rambi and Enguarde. They're the easiest to use and arguably the most fun. The character animations in this game are absolutely phenomenal as well, both when you're playing a level or when you're in the stage select. Keeping on the topic of character animations, it's interesting for me to think about in games like New Super Mario Bros. U on the Switch. While the level select maps are absolutely gorgeous and immaculate, the general animations and energy are kind of lackluster. You look at Mario. When he completes a level, he jumps out of the stage, a little animation plays showing you've unlocked the next stage, and that's about it. Compared to this game where when you actually complete a level, Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong do a little dance signifying that, yes, you did it, this is a big accomplishment, good for you. It all likely comes down to personal preference though. I always enjoy the different stylistic choices to try and spice up the look and feel of a game, while other folks might be more akin to wanting to just jump right back into the action and don't really want to pay attention to what's happening on screen. Speaking of what's happening on screen, I could praise Rareware for their work on this game every step of the way. It is absolutely gorgeous. Modern consoles have amazing graphics today, but there's something so nice about these simpler styles and directions for games. They don't always have to go for the most realistic, they can just go for something that looks timeless. As much as I have sung the praises of Kingdom Hearts, even I can admit, it does look like a PS2 game. The sharp corners, the potato lip flaps. You can tell it's a PlayStation 2 game. But you play this game, all you're thinking is, wow, it's Donkey Kong Country. And Donkey Kong Country is beautiful. It's such an interesting thought to me. You look at games like Grand Theft Auto 5, everybody praises it to high heaven for its realistic graphics, its gameplay. But the more and more it gets re-released on newer consoles, the more and more older flaws you start to see, especially as the medium of games improves. Although that's not to say that games that deliberately try to go for that simple graphic and art design are automatically winners either. Look at Pokemon for example. Their older sprite-based artwork is simple and timeless and looks great. And while their 3D games on the Nintendo Switch are trying to capture that same level of simplicity, the effort going into that project is not enough to justify the results. Oop, but a quick tangent though. Good old Cranky Kong. I was so surprised when I found out that Cranky Kong is actually the OG Donkey Kong from the arcade cabinet, and also that the Donkey Kong we're currently playing as is also the same Donkey Kong from the Donkey Kong Jr. cabinet that we play as. I cannot find any conclusive proof that says whether or not this was a Rare idea or if this was a Nintendo idea. I have seen some excerpts that apparently Miyamoto likes this level of lore with Cranky, and if this was actually a Rare idea instead of a Nintendo idea, I think that goes to show how much Nintendo really appreciates their third-party developers. That's enough talking about the creative side of this though, I believe. Swinging back to my experience with this game, I didn't know to search for secrets like this when I was a kid. Obviously I knew the Rambi secret because like I said, when I played Jungle Hijinks I played it over and over again, and my dad showed me that particular secret on Jungle Hijinks as well. With this one though, when I was playing by myself, I never thought to, oh, I should jump into this barrel unless I was prompted to by somebody else watching me play. My entire focus as a kid was, my goal is to get to the end, so I'm going to get to the end. Goodness forbid I try to do anything else. I do sometimes have a similar mindset as an adult now when I'm playing games similar to this one, or maybe even a Mario game. I might be in a very difficult stage and I'm saying to myself, I know there's a secret there and I could gain an extra life from it, but at the same time, I've been struggling and I know that going for this particular secret could cost me another life and that could set me back even further. So I might say, well, it's better to try and complete the level and move on than just get one extra life. It can be a double-edged sword sometimes, especially if the level after this one is extremely difficult. Granted though, for this particular video, we are only on World 1, so it's not exactly super difficult just yet. Of all the levels in this game in particular, my personal experience is that the cavern levels are the more difficult. Not necessarily because of the general tactics or layout of the stage, but because they're the ones that seem to have the most gimmicks. There are plenty of stages throughout this game, as we'll see later on, that have their own challenges as well. But in my experience with this game, the cavern stages have a lot more to offer in terms of a challenge. A lot of people could easily point to the water stages as we're about to experience, but compared to so many other platformers similar to this one, these water stages aren't so bad. Compare this to Mario. With Mario, you have basically enemies that are either on a set path or gravitate directly towards you. Here in Donkey Kong, enemies are on a set path, but there aren't extra enemies that try to gravitate towards you like bloopers in Mario. And at the same time, you don't have as much control with Mario in the water as you do with Donkey Kong. With Donkey Kong, as you can see clearly here, there's a bit of a float time, and each button press responds in a quick motion. Mario has a quick response as well, but usually you have to button mash a lot to try and get any form of quick reaction out of him. Press the thing once, he'll flap his arms, but that's about it. Although I suppose that could be considered part and parcel for a water level, especially for a Super Nintendo platformer. I do stand by my earlier statement that I believe that the cavern levels are more difficult than the water levels in this game though. With the cavern levels in this game, it's similar gameplay to what you're used to, but it throws in new wrinkles. Stuff to actively try and throw the player for a loop. Compare that to here, while it has obstacles to be certain, the water levels are all virtually the same. You know that you have to respond to these situations differently than you would a normal level, so you adjust accordingly. The cavern levels, you assume that you need to respond to them the same way you do every other level, but that's in my opinion a part of their deception. They look and feel like every other level in the game, but given their unique challenges, it means that you're more likely to trip over yourself. And that's helped by the fact that Enguarde here is probably the best animal companion in all the levels. Rambi is a close second given the fact that he can just bulldoze through enemies on a regular basis, but Enguarde's animations and movement through water helps a ton, as well as his unique attack animation for the enemies that are on tracks. You don't have to worry about enemies changing their trajectory, you can just press a button and the enemy's out of your way. Except for the octopus like you see here, those are one of the few invincible enemies in this game. Granted, this is the World 1 water level, so it is a lot easier than other water levels throughout the game. It is the one that's supposed to introduce you to this particular gameplay mechanic, and then tests your mastery of that particular gameplay mechanic later on in the game with more difficult levels like any good platformer should. And since I did replay World 1 over and over and over and over again, this water level is one that, like all the other levels I've talked about throughout this first video, I do kind of have memorized down to a science. Which is why it's so easy to collect lives so early on, because I know where all the Kong letters are, I know where to find all the bananas, and I know the levels enough so that I don't accidentally blow an early life to them. Case in point, another Kong, another life. With that, we've completed the water level, and we are moving on to the next to last level of this first world. And while I have been bragging for these last 10 minutes about, oh, I know everything about World 1, I know everything about World 1, I actually know the least about this level, Barrel Cannon Canyon. And that's because there's actually a secret shortcut to make the level go by super fast. Near the entrance, there's an option to jump up and launch yourself into an automatic launch barrel that sends you flying across half of the map. That's why there are so many bananas in a straight line just off the top half of the screen. So for this playthrough, I made it a point of emphasis to actually play through the entire Barrel Cannon Canyon stage and get to show off the level in its entirety instead of just the shortcut and what little of the stage remains after said shortcut. And speaking as somebody who has not really played this level a ton, this does do a good job of introducing the player to the manual controlled barrels instead of the automatic fire barrels as your only option, and it helps create that preparedness for later stages. And of course, the combo of jumping off Kremlings is always fun. I always love the sound that the Kremlings made whenever you defeat them. I am not a sound artist or a Foley mixer or anything of that sort by any means, but I would love to know the process of how they create the Kremling sound effect. It's just so funny to me, I don't know why. But now we've reached the last stretch of the level, and once again, it's great practice for what's coming in the later portion of the game. A lot of levels focus heavily on this timing between the barrels, so it is a good way to introduce the player to this mechanic and get them ready for when it'll try to throw all the stops at them. Instead of having just one obstacle, they'll have 20. And just like that, with a few more Kremlings knocked out of the way, we have reached the end of this level and are ready to take on the first boss of Donkey Kong Country. If I had to make one nitpick about this game in particular as to why I wouldn't like it, with the exception of King K. Rool, all the bosses are not unique. They're quite literally just blown up common enemies that you fight on a regular basis. Very Naughty here is just a blown up version of Naughty that you fight in just about every single level. I'm not saying that the bosses aren't hard or provide their own unique challenges. Obviously, as you see here, if you're not paying attention, you can easily fall into a bit of a rough spot. But I just wish that they allowed the creative team to create more unique enemies for Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong to fight. This is the only Donkey Kong Country game I've played, so I can't speak to whether or not the sequels or reboots did a great job with boss variety or not. I just wish we had more in this game. That being said, the animations is once again on point, and we've cleared the first world. Thank you so much for watching, please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you next time for World 2 on Retro Replay.